What I'm going to talk about is something a little bit different than what you've all heard this morning or this afternoon. Of course, we're all trying to prepare for a disaster. It could be a disaster could take many forms. It could be a hurricane, it could be a tornado, it could be a flood, it could be an earthquake, it could be a blizzard, martial law, grid sabotage, the grid down, or an economic collapse. Or it could be something like an EMP or a CME. Now, last time we met, I talked about the fact that even the FEMA site took down EMP off of their site and put CME, which is coronal mass ejection, which is basically a major solar flare. Now, why do they do that? Well, they're thinking, they probably see something happening. But obviously, some of the things we always have to be careful, be aware of and prepare for is having enough water, enough food, and of course, shelter. But I'm going to talk about number 4, which is probably something that most people neglect. And that's communications. If a disaster were to happen, radio communication is going to be important because you're not going to know what is going to happen, where it's going to happen, what you can do to prepare for it. Now, for instance, sometimes they say, well, if there's a hurricane, just have a battery-operated radio. Well, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I've installed and maintained all the radio stations you hear in this area. And I know for a fact that there's only one of them that will stay on the air for probably only about 20 days if the grid goes down or if we have a major outage. Only one. All the rest of them will go dark. Okay? I've been in the communications field for over 53 years. I've been a ham radio operator. I've been all kinds of communications. I've built radio stations. I've built 55 stations now throughout the United States. And I know what I see when I walk into some of these facilities, and I know what they don't have. But they don't have the money to put into emergency backup power. All they have is enough money to get the station on the air and running. But if there is a disaster, let's say there's a major disaster. No cell phones will work, by the way. Most of these cell towers you see out here, they run on battery. They don't run on generator. The batteries may last for maybe 24, 48 hours, and then they're gone. No internet, no websites, no emails, no landlines, no regular dial-up telephones. Satellite broadcast communications is going to go off. So what are you going to do for communications? Now, why do I say communication is important? Well, let's say the power goes out at your house. Do you say, well, I'll just wait for it to come back on? Now, sit around twiddling your thumbs or go to sleep at night saying, well, by morning, hopefully it'll be on the air. You have your power back. Well, that's not necessarily the case. If it's a major power outage, if there's maybe a grid collapse or sabotage of the grid, it's not going to come on right away. Or it may not come on at all. Who knows? Obviously, I said at the last meeting that who has total control of our grid right now? The Chinese Communist Party. The CCP has control of our grid right now. Why? Go figure. Now, you know that, I don't want to get into this tall grass, but China wants Taiwan. They want a distraction. So what they can do is just say, okay, flip the switch off in the United States. So let them go into scurrying around and trying to recover their power while we take over Taiwan. It's a distraction. So I don't want to go there right now, but I just want to say that communications for you is important because if it's just an outage for overnight, or let's say, next morning, great. The air conditioner's running, the refrigerator's buzzing away, your ceiling fan's working, everything's fine. But what if it doesn't come on the next morning? What if it doesn't come on for the next day or two? How are you going to know what's going on if you, let's say, live out in the rural areas? What are you going to do? What Dana did mention was the fact that we all have radios. The group that's putting this on, we all have what's called GMRS. There are special radios. But these radios here are very important to have for communications around this area. I have a repeater site up at the top of Shawneeland in North Mountain, and it reaches out all the way from Cumberland to Harpers Ferry, all the way almost to Harrisonburg, and I've actually worked it in Frederick, Maryland, so it does have a very large area coverage. You say, well, okay, what do I need the radio for? Well, you know, you might need it for security, communications, be in touch with your family or your friends or your neighbors, or like our group here, the Mountaintop Patriots, we all are in communication with each other. If something drastic happens, we all get on the radio. We find out what's going on. If somebody needs help, we go and help them. So radios are very important. Now, GMRS is called General Mobile Radio System. It's a simple license to get. You can go on the FCC website, and for 35 bucks, you can get a license that lasts you 10 years. And the license will allow you and your family to use the same radios and the frequencies and the repeaters to be able to communicate with each other. Or you can use it just talking back and forth to each other, whether you're going to have two cars and you're going to the beach, or if you're going camping someplace or whatever, you can have two radios. One of the big problems nowadays is the fact that they're pushing the other, what's called FRS radios. Now, some of you have these. They're cheap and dirty. You can buy them at Walmart for a blister pack of two of them for maybe $20 or so, and it says, oh, you know, 27-mile range or 15-mile range. Well, these will only work for about a half a mile, and that's about it. Now, if you're on the top of Shawneeland, talking the top of Blue Mountain, you might be able to get coverage, but that's about it. These are just cheap and dirty. These are good for just around the house. If someone's out there in the back lot mowing a field or something like that, or if somebody's doing whatever, this is a nice radio to have. You can use it for if you're shopping and you have kids and you say, well, you're going to the mall, they want to go someplace else, you say, I'll call you when I need you, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, these are cheap and dirty. They're great. They're FRS radios. But these are the ones for good quality, medium, low to medium distance coverage. And if you need any more information about it, you can contact any one of the members of the group, and we can help you find out how to get these radios. Yes?
Are there any radios that are not made in China now? Is there any way to have EMP, protection on anything?
No. No. Unfortunately, just about 99.9% of all the radios are all made in China, unfortunately.
What if we purchased old analog stuff? Is there any protection with that?
Whether it's analog or digital, the protection has to do with putting them in a, let's say, Faraday cage and protecting them from getting hit by an EMP pulse. These radios, they're cheap and dirty. If this radio was made nowadays in the United States, it would be probably about $400 and $500. But you can buy these for like $55 or $40, and some even cheaper. Some you can get as much as little as $23. They're cheap enough that if they break, you throw them away and get another one. But if you had a $400 or $500 radio and it breaks, you're going to be crying the blues because it's going to be very expensive. This is Baofeng, yes. We all use what's called the UV82. They're available on Amazon. They're available on eBay. But I have to tell you something. I have to caution you. These radios, the FCC locked down these radios, so they are no longer available to be sold in the FRS and the ham and the GMRS bands. They're all locked to the ham bands, and I don't have time to go and explain it all. It's in my book that I have, and I'm selling them back here, and I have some back here too. But the FCC has clamped down on these radios because they are not licensed for GMRS unless they are GMRS radios. Now, they make GMRS ones look just like this that are GMRS, okay? But what I'm saying is this is for local close-in communications. But let's say the power's out, nothing works, your radio, you turn your radio on in your car, dead, no satellite communications, no internet, no nothing else. How do you know what's going on at this point? What do you do? Well, there are other ways with long-distance communications, not these type of radios, but there are long-distance radios primarily in the ham bands, but they'll allow you to work hundreds, if not thousands of miles. Now, this radio happens to be a simple little shortwave type radio. It's actually all made here, not in the United States, it's made in my own backyard. I actually built this radio. This radio right here, it's Morse code only, unfortunately, but there are other types that have voice. But this radio, believe it or not, I can actually work England with on a good day. This only runs about 2 watts. And I can actually run it off a solar panel. So with a solar panel and this radio and an antenna and a little Morse code key here, I can work practically the whole world with this little radio. Actually, I've sold probably about 400 of these throughout the United States and the world. I've sold these to New Zealand, I've sold them to Australia, to Brazil. I actually designed this board, and I actually make this, and it's a very popular radio. There are other, I hate to say the word, Chinese radios, but they're a little bit more, have a few more features than mine, but they're Chinese. The problem is that if it goes bad or if something breaks in them, you're done. So, you know, you want to kind of stay away from these, but they're convenient, okay, but you want to stay away from these unless you just want the convenience of them. In fact, they're cheap enough that you can buy a couple of them. So if it breaks, toss it out and get another one, but you can't repair these. Mine, you can repair because it's all discrete components. I can actually take a part out that's bad and put a part in and it works. And I maintain these, I repair these and everything. So what I'm saying is there are other, by the way, I'm not going to neglect CB. Now, everybody know what CB, the Citizens Band radio is. Just about every trucker out there, long-haul trucker has got a CB radio in it. They keep track of each other and they keep track of the smokies on the road and everything else. But you can also buy, this one's a nice one. It's about $100. It's a Cobra. It's all channel, 40 channels, walkie-talkie. It works quite well, but you're not going to get the range either. You're only going to get probably a range of about maybe 3 or 4 or 5 miles at the most. Okay. But with communications, especially this long-distance communications, that's what I'm trying to stress right now is long-distance communications. With the ham radio, you could contact somebody in another state, maybe another region of the country, and you can get on there and say, hey, are you all okay are you okay in Illinois? You have power? They say, no, we're without power too. What's going on? I said, well, we're here in the DC area and we have nothing. Well, then, see, at this point in time, you'll at least know where to start preparing. In other words, if they say, oh yeah, we got power, we don't have any problem here, you may find that it's only a regional thing here. Maybe something happened to the main high tension lines in this area and knocked out part of the Shenandoah Valley. Well, then we can deal with that. We can go elsewhere to get food or whatever, but just remember that with long distance communications, you will be able to find out ahead of time what's going on. If you don't know what's going on, it could be a matter of life and death. So, I had a lot more to talk about, but since I'm actually running sound and video now, I don't have that much more I can add to my message, except for the fact that there are 4 classes of communications. There's CB, there's GMRS, there's FRS, and there's ham radio. All 4 of those do have their place, and it's something that we all need to think about having, because if you don't have communications, that's number 4 on the list. You have water, food, shelter, and communications, which is very important. Communications also entails security, because if you are in a subdivision, let's say in a rural subdivision, and the power goes out, you can contact your neighbors and say, hey, look, you know, we're without power here too. So let's keep track, make sure that nobody's going to come through the neighborhood and try to go through your house and try to steal something like that. So, those are things that all you can do with shortwave and ham radio and low, short distance communications. Speaking of power, I want to touch on one thing. This last Monday, we had a huge storm, right? It took out over 100,000 homes. The electricity was out overnight in the D.C. area. Alexandria, Arlington, all the way up to Baltimore. Over 100,000 homes, and it took 3 days to get the power back up. Now, you may think that, well, that's nothing. But have you lived in your house with 3 days without power? It's tough. You're out there eating ice cream because, it's going to be gone. And if you keep on opening up your deep freeze and stuff like that, it's not going to last. So that's only 3 days. Well, what happens if it's out for a week? Well, what happens if it's out for a month? Do you have plans on what you need to do? Do you have an alternate plan? Do you have enough dried foods? Do you have enough dried goods? Beans, rice, whatever, salt, sugar, anything else that you can make up your own food with? Because everything in the refrigerator, you say, well, I got a generator. I'll just run the generator. Well, how long is that generator going to last? You only have a certain amount of gas. By the way, the gas stations won't be running if the power's out, major gas stations. If a major power outage, you won't have any gasoline either. So what I'm saying is that it's really important to plan ahead. Now, some of you have my book. Some of you, their book is available back here. I have a big book over here too. Should be some over here. It's not that I'm pushing off my book, but my book is a very important book to have.
I am. I'm pushing this book.
That book is what you really need to start thinking about what you need to do if a major disaster happens. I'm actually getting ready to release volume 2 of this book because it covers a lot more in-depth detail which you'll need. If you have to bug out, like for instance, we had the last class over there at the church. I talked about everyday carry bags and bug out bags and stuff like that. This book is going to get you a long ways into preparing for a bad situation. Okay, so I'll just leave it at that. I know I'm probably way under time, but we're good? Yeah, any questions? Yes.
Question on War Room, they come on and advertise every once in a while a radio that's supposed to bounce signals off satellite.
Mm-hmm.
How's that fit into this?
It does and it doesn't. Okay, it depends on what you mean by bouncing. Now, there are satellite phones, sat phones they call them. If we have a major grid outage, don't forget now, those satellites are all run by ground control. If ground control doesn't have power, satellites aren't going to know where they're just going to be flying all over the place and crashing into each other and everything else. Sat phones are one thing. That's the only thing, like our GPS units. There's a constellation of satellites that make our GPS units work. That's how they work in our cell phones, and that's how they work in our car locators and everything else. But what I've seen I don't remember that particular ad on War Room, but they do sell those type of radios. By the way, if you decide to say, hey, I want to become a ham, with this same radio, which can be used in the ham bands also, with an antenna about that long, looks like a herringbone, you can actually work satellites. You can bounce signals off the moon. You can actually, with this antenna here and on a certain frequency I can program it, I can talk to the ISS, the space shuttle, the space stations, with this radio. If you have your ham license, you can actually talk to the astronauts. All the astronauts have got ham licenses. So you can get on there, and this ISS goes over every 90 minutes, and during that 90-minute time, it's about a 3 or 4 minute horizon to horizon. You can get on there, and you can actually talk to the astronauts, which is pretty cool. So that's just one of the little added features of this here. I think that covers everything that I had here, so give it back to you.
Guys?
I wish I had more, but
That's excellent.
I'm trying to get these.
There's really
I want to thank Rick because it really, it goes, we can't explain just how good Rick has been with us. I mean, every single one of us, and Rick presented me this book, and I went home with my wife and we've read the book. There is so much in here, there's just so much in here, and there's stuff around your house that you can use, that you don't even think about. We built a Faraday cage by using a trash can, So if an EMP hits or something like that, everything's in a trash can it's all wrapped up. And then we were like, somebody said to us, well, don't you need cardboard in there? And Rick's like, no, you don't need cardboard in there. This works this way. I'll tell you this, not only does this guy prepare us this way, but he prepares really good chicken. He's got a catering service. That's why I call him 0022, 23, because there really isn't anything Rick can't do. And what we're going to be doing over at the church at Radical Change is we're working on a couple different things. One, we're going to be doing prep training because, and I'll tell you, we do this every Tuesday night. And you'd be amazed at how many people forget on Tuesday night at 7:30, we're supposed to, oh man, and I get a text message. Hey man, I forgot my rate. Well, that's really going to help you in the middle of a problem, okay? And we had a situation a week ago where we actually needed them. There's been a few times, and we've all had them for over a year, okay? And there's been a few times that we've actually needed these. We had Bob, my buddy Reverend Bob, had a tree fall on him last year. I mean, literally had a tree fall on him. Okay, we had no electric for 2 days. Okay, how do we communicate? It was that simple. And you don't think about it. Well, I'll go out tomorrow and I'll get one. Okay, what we do on Monday nights and what we'll be doing at the church is we're going to have supplies there. Okay, so you don't have to go out there and figure out how to work it and what to do. Rick's there to teach you. We're going to charge for the classes because it takes a little bit of money and a little bit of time to do it, but it's not going to be expensive. Okay, but we'll be doing stuff like that. We'll be doing child trafficking. We'll be handling abuse. We'll be handling medical. There's a lot of different things that you all are going to want to be part of. This is the most important time to be prepared. I'm telling you.